What's up, YouTube? You checking out the Frequent Flyer. If you're returning, welcome back. Well, it's about that time, guys. It's time for me to start doing my top fives for the year. And this video here, I'm going to display my top 5 indoor brushless quads. That's right, you heard correctly. Brushless quads for indoors. I never thought that I'd be flying brushless quads indoors. Brushless quads have been getting smaller and smaller, so now we can enjoy this part of the hobby that has been sparked by the Tiny Whoop and enjoy it with brushless motors. Starting off with the countdown, coming in at number 5. I gotta warn you guys that number 5 is kind of unusual, but I'm just going to break it out and show you guys. The King Kong 90 GT. Now, I know what you're thinking. How the heck do you fly this one indoors? It doesn't have prop guards. Well, it does come with prop guards, but I don't like to fly it indoors with prop guards. I don't even like to fly it FPV indoors. What I like to do with this thing is fly it line of sight acro. I actually get down with some line of sight acro indoors with this one. It's not too much of a crazy punch out on it. So when I hit throttle, you know, with small mistakes on the throttle don't make this thing rocket through the ceiling or anything like that. But it is enough power for me to do acro flips and all. So a lot of times I'm finding myself just flying this thing line of sight acro indoors. The King Kong 90 GT is also an awesome outdoor flyer. I do have some video of me flying this outdoors, having fun with it. Maybe I'll let you guys see that at the end of this video. But coming in at number 5, the 90 GT from King Kong. Really awesome model. Flying it indoors now. Coming in at number 4. Number 4 is this guy. The LAN Chi Bluebird 85S. Now this one, you have to be careful for this one. I'm going to warn you guys that these rings on here are metal. So if you're flying this thing crazily, it does take 3S. So if you fly this with a 3S indoors, you're bound to break something. It does have crazy punch out on 3S, but on 2S this thing is a little more docile, and you can fly it indoors FPV because it does have, I don't know what it is, but it's that characteristic that the Tiny Whoop has where it tries to slow itself down. It doesn't go flying. If you're flying fast forward and you take your hands off the sticks and don't give any input, it seems like it tries to slow itself down. So that makes for a really nice indoor flyer. You're able to hit some holes with it and all. This is a little larger than the traditional Tiny Whoop. Let's have a look at, this is the size of a Tiny Whoop here. This is the Bold Clash B Whoop, but check it out. It's a little larger, but I'm still able to fly this thing indoors and fly underneath chairs and between stuff, up and down stairs. And it's a little noisy. And one problem that I did have with this one is the receiver that came with it. I had the DSM version, and so the receiver that came with it wasn't very good. I was getting dropouts with that, so I replaced it with a little FR Sky Pro, I believe it is. This little antenna here sticking out the back is what I switched to. It's an FR Sky Pro, I believe it is. The original receiver was DSM X Diversity, so it's kind of surprising that it was a bad receiver, that I was getting dropouts or whatnot, and this one works a little better. So the LAN Chi Bluebird also has OSD. It has a spot on here where you can add a buzzer, but I don't think I need a buzzer on it because of the OSD. It does have a fly color OSD, so that's one negative about it. It doesn't have Betaflight OSD, so it's not really configurable through Betaflight, but you can still go in and change the PIDs and all, change the rates on the fly through the OSD. And one thing I did benefit from having this fly color OSD on here and the DSM version is that these fly color OSD flight controllers don't actually have a 3.3 volt spot for DSM support. And so when they use DSM, they hotwire one of the little resistors or something that's on the board in order to tap into that 3.3 volts. And I learned where that's at, and so now that allowed me to run DSM on models like this here, that doesn't really support DSMX. I'm able to add my DSMX receivers onto it, and so that's one benefit. But this is an indoor flyer that I use, definitely an indoor flyer for me. I don't know, it might not be for you. It's kind of loud with the original props that it comes with. It comes with these props here, and they don't give you any spares. So if you don't have a cutter, then you're going to be in bad shape with this one probably, because I can't find any spares of this prop here. And so I've been cutting down my own. I have a little cutter, and these here are the Gem Fan Hokey props. I think these are the 1940 Hokies, but I cut them down a little, just a little bit off the edge there, and that makes this thing a nice flyer. Makes less noise than with this one here. So I'm running those on it. And so that's the LAN Chi Bluebird 85 coming in at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is this one here. This is the Makerfire Armor 67, and this one is a really nice flyer. My only gripe with this one is it's pretty loud. This is a loud one here. It screams when you, especially when you kick the throttle all the way up. And it's a 2 or 3S flyer. I don't recommend flying it on 3S indoors, but you can fly it on 2S indoors and get away with it. It's pretty small, doesn't do too much damage if you don't fly too fast with it. The props are pretty easy to get, and this thing is pretty durable too. I have crashed it a bunch of times. I even fly this one outdoors though, and I have crashed it outdoors, and it's held up. No repairs at all with this one, except for the props. These props, I don't know how these props get damaged with this carbon fiber around it, and this carbon fiber is pretty good too. I've crashed it pretty hard, and this carbon fiber has held up, but I don't know how these darn props do get damaged. They get a crease in the middle there. I've never actually broken one, but I do get creases in them, and I just swap them out because I have so many of these little props here. You can get them on Amazon, and there's a few online stores you can get these from too. I think they're by Racer Star, but this is a pretty nice one here. It has OSD, and it's Betaflight OSD. There's also a spot on it for adding a buzzer, but I never added the buzzer because most of the times I just fly this one indoors. And I turned the rates up really high so I can do flips really fast indoors. And this is just an awesome little flyer here. The DSM receiver is really tiny here, as you can see. I did switch the antenna on it here. I put a smaller antenna on it, a little better one. I think the antenna that came on this one was just a little copper wire there, and I put one of these antennas on here that has some protection. It was hard for me to get some heat shrink on that little copper wire because it's so thin. And so I just swapped out the antenna wire there. And so pretty awesome model here. The Armor 67 coming in at number 3. Now coming in at number 4, a lot of you guys are probably going to wonder why I didn't have this one in first place, because this is a really good one, really fun one. But coming in at number 2 is this guy here. This is the BB66 from Full Speed. Now this one is pretty awesome, pretty nice flyer here, really nice. It's not that much bigger than a Tiny Whoop. So you can see this Makerfire is the size of a Tiny Whoop as well. And look, it's only a little tiny bit bigger. It's only a little bit more powerful than a Tiny Whoop though. Not a lot of power. It's only 1S, but it's definitely enough power to have fun indoors. But my one problem that I have with this one is the durability. And not that the main frame of it is breaking or anything like that, but these little pieces right here, they break very easy and they stick out a little. So sometimes when you hit a wall or something right there, it'll just break. These things break really easy. They give you 4 of them, and I understand why, because they break so easy. But this is a pretty decent model though. And most of the times when you're flying it, you're going to probably hit the top of it if you're flying fast. But I guess it's just my bad luck that I just hit right here and these things crack right there. So A pretty decent flyer this one is. This one has OSD and everything. I also have the D-Shot 600 running on here with the turtle mode on it. So this does have turtle mode. I did have to update the ESCs though. I think 16.7 is the version of BL Heli S that you have to have on the ESCs there for you to be able to do turtle mode. But I do have turtle mode on here and it does work. Pretty neat to not have to run and pick this thing up all the time. You could just use turtle mode and flip it back over. I think these two here support turtle mode as well, but I haven't updated the ESCs or even tried. I think I'm still running the same. I think I'm still running the old beta flight on this one, but I think I did update this one to 3.2, but I just never did the turtle mode, but I'm pretty sure it'll work. But this one, I'll be having a lot of fun with this one. It's a 1S model, so you're not going to be damaging anything. It's pretty light, not really a big footprint, so you can hit small holes with it and everything. Just about every small hole that you can hit with a tiny whoop, you can hit with this. Oh, and another thing, this thing is really a pain to set up. It comes without a receiver, and you have to remove everything. You have to take all of these screws off. You have to take some screws off that's under here, these two here, and then there's 4 screws here that have nuts on them. You have to remove the nuts off here, and then when you lift this part off, there's some more nuts on the flight controller that you have to take off just to solder a receiver on this thing. And not only that, you have to flip the flight controller over in order to find the pads that you have to solder the receiver onto. So a lot of stuff you have to do to get this one up and running. I really wish that they would sell this in a bind and fly. I haven't seen any bind and fly versions of this, but that's a thing that they really should do, definitely, because if you have a problem with your receiver on this one and have to swap it out, man, you're in hell with gasoline draws on. This thing is just a pain to try to add a receiver onto this thing. But coming in at number 2, the Full Speed BB66. And coming in at number 1, I know this is probably going to be a shocker for some of you guys, but it's definitely my favorite indoor flyer in the brushless category right now. The King Kong or LADRC ET100. Now the ET100 is the biggest of all these brushless micros here, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is a shocker for you guys. But this thing is a really nice flyer. It's very easy to navigate around things because this thing behaves just like a tiny whoop when you're flying it. So it's just a really nice model to try to do proximity flight with. And it's really easy to go under tables and go under chairs and go up and down stairs because of the power of the motors. Now, I want to say that this thing did surprise me at how much power it has. I thought that this was the one that wasn't going to have much power, and this is a little less powerful than the other two, but this one does hold its own with other micros in its class. It does have really nice motors on it. I want to say that these Sunny Sky motors are the reason why this thing has more power than usual. And when I say more power than usual, these are 1103 motors and they're 7500 kV. And usually King Kong uses the 7800 1103 motors on their smaller models in their series. But this one seems just to be a little more powerful than those. Especially running these props here. I never seen these props generate as much thrust as they do on this model here. The throttle punch on this thing is pretty manageable, but at the same time it's no slouch, so you have no problem flying over objects and stuff like that, gaining height really quickly. Just a really awesome model to fly indoors. And this thing does have these rings around it that seem like they're pretty much indestructible. I've crashed this thing a bunch of times pretty hard, and these things really hold up. I can't see any sign of any crackage or anything on these, and I crash them hard. And this canopy here is pretty decent too. I've crashed the bigger ones outdoors and no damage has been done to the canopy. I can say that on the larger models of this in the series, the ET115 and the ET125, I think the rings being a little larger, might have made them a little more prone to breakage, because I did manage to break one of my rings on a ET125, but this one seems like it's a little more durable. I've crashed this one as hard, and this one just seems to hold up a little better. Pretty awesome little flyer here for indoors. I never thought that I'd be flying something this big indoors and really like it better than everything else. But I guess this is just one of those things. It's just one of a kind. It's really, really durable. The props are really well protected. I have never broken a prop on this. These little rings around here seem like they do flex a little bit, but they don't flex enough to hit the prop here. Especially, you have to squeeze these down. You have to apply a little bit of pressure to these to actually get them to bend. And I doubt if crashing into a wall or crashing into anything is going to really, you have to be flying pretty fast to actually make these rings flex enough to hit these props. And the props are well protected, as you can see. There's really not any way any obstruction could hit the prop unless it goes down from the top or it somehow gets in through the bottom. But I've never broken a prop. And these props here, as I said, they fly better, they work better on this model than I've seen them work on other models. And that's surprising, because this seems like a heavier model with these rings on it and all, and this big canopy. But I don't know, it just flies really nice. And this is running multi-shot. One bad thing I can say about it, it's running multi-shot and not D-Shot 600. Multi-shot is pretty good. Some might argue that multi-shot may be a little more responsive or work a little better than D-Shot. But that's a whole nother story. But the main thing, the main reason why you would want D-Shot 600 on here instead of multi-shot is the fact that you can run turtle mode on D-Shot 600 and you can't run it on multi-shot. And so this board in here is wired or configured a certain way, or it's built a certain type of way that you can't really run D-Shot on here without modification. But there is a mod that you can do to get your board to run D-Shot 600. Right now with the multi-shot, it's working nice, flying really nice. But if you try to add D-Shot 600 and run that, it's gonna, one of the motors are not gonna spin up. I think motor number 1 is non-responsive when you run D-Shot 600 on this one. But you have to do some rewiring, and it's a little trick, a little mod that you have to do. I'll show you guys that a little later in order to get turtle mode running on this thing. Why would you want turtle mode? Well, a lot of times I fly upstairs and I'm downstairs and I'll flip it over. It'll crash and flip over like that. I'm yelling upstairs, asking my kids to flip it over, the wifey or anybody, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And so needless to say, sometimes I have to make that walk of shame upstairs and go flip this thing back over so I can fly again. But having turtle mode, you don't need anyone. You can just flip it over yourself and just continue to fly. Pretty awesome from those devs at Beta Flight. The people who are working on that are geniuses. But for the most part, this thing is my favorite flyer, guys. The ET100. Never thought I'd see the day that I'd be flying brushless quads indoors. But that day is here. That time is now. My favorite indoor brushless flyer, the ET100 from King Kong, or LDARC, should I say. Thanks for watching.